everybody, my name is Kyle, 39. Welcome back to another video. Today in this one I'll be doing another tier list video, and in this one I'll be doing it on meta decks post Valiant Smashers. Yeah, so Valiant Smashers have just released, and I honestly don't think it's going to change that much. Maybe Centurion has an impact somewhere. We'll talk about it in just one second. So yeah, before we get into it, I think this will probably be the last meta deck tier list I do for the year, just because I don't think it's going to change after this. Like, there should be nothing else. Like, I know the structure deck is coming out soon, the Fire King one, but I don't think it's going to have that much of an impact on the meta. So the next time I'll probably be doing this is probably when the ban list release, which I'm expecting to be in January. I don't think we're going to have a December list. So that's probably the next time I'm going to do a tier list like this. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into the tier list, shall we? We'll start off with tier 1. I so heartily believe is Unchained. Unchained is a very, very good deck. It is, you know, somewhat fallen off since the last time I did the tier list, was like right after Age of Overlord just came out. But now it just won a YCS, so it's actually kind of insane that this deck is still very, very good. Again, nothing got hit on the last list. It's still, everything is there. You know, going first, you know, its end board doesn't seem too great, but the end boards it ends on, like, it's a lot. Like, just ending on, like, the Soul Rage, the DDD, XYZ, and the Escape, like the trap card, that's a shit ton of interruptions by itself, and it guarantees follow-up as well, which is very, very insane. At going second, it has a good time going second as well, just because, one, it can run a couple hand traps, but two, I mean, it doesn't really care if it gets destroyed, because if you destroy them, they'll just get another one out onto the field. Very, very good deck, and probably will get hit in the next list. Don't know how. We'll talk about it once we get there. Next thing up on tier 1 is Rescue. It's fallen off just a little bit. I don't think it's fallen off to like 1.5. I still think it's a tier 1 deck, but Rescue has fallen off just a tad bit. I think it's because people have now been, you know, actually testing against it, so they actually know what they're trying to do. So they're putting in more cards. Like, you know, Droll actually hits this. You know that? Droll actually somewhat hits this deck. So it's actually kind of insane that it does that. But yeah, a lot of people just figured out how to play against Rescue now. I don't think it's fallen off so badly. I think it's still one of the better decks in the format. But, you know, still a very good deck you're going to have to worry about. But, you know, there are ways to play through it now as well. People have figured out ways to play through it, which is very, very, very good. So yeah, those are my tier 1's decks. That doesn't mean if it's lower than if one of your decks is lower than this, that doesn't mean I think it's worse than the top decks right now, just because, well, this format is interesting. It's super diverse. I mean, there isn't a clear-cut best deck in the format. There are plenty of good decks in this format. This is just my opinion, thinking these are the two of the better decks right now that you could be playing. So if your deck is somewhere lower than this, don't take offense, just because the meta is super diverse anyways. Your deck could probably compete, even if it's like at rogue status, your deck can probably compete with the big boys here. Speaking of tier 1.5, let's get into it. I'm going to start off with Purely. Purely is just one of those decks you're always going to have to worry about, because one, it can run a shit ton of hand traps, two, Noir is just an asshole, and three, Zeus is just an asshole as well. This deck is very, very, very good going first or going second as well. It has a good matchup against something like the Unchained because of something like Happy Memory as well. So, I mean, very, very good. So, it's just, you know, hand traps they can run a shit ton of. Going first, they're trying to get to Noir, which is, you know, an asshole. And going second, again, the hand traps, but they can also make a Zeus line, which is super ridiculous. So again, this is just always a deck that you do have to worry about. The problem with Purely is there's a lot of outs to Purely. Like a Kaiju does it pretty much. You know, D-Barrier still exists. You know, XYZ Encore is being played now because some decks just die to Dweller. So that also outs Purely as well. So that's the only problem with Purely I'm seeing, is there's just a lot of outs to it because of that. But Purely is still a very decent deck in my opinion. Same, like Herald of the Abyss as well. I should mention that as well. But yeah, Purely I think is still a very good deck. I don't think it's going to be tier 1, but I think it's 1.5 for sure. Next thing up here is Tier Limit. Tier Limit Horus. It's still, again, just being able to mill a shit ton off like the Ishizus and now the Horus cards as well. It's just a really good deck, and I think the only thing it was holding back was a Rise Heart. I don't think it's up here. I don't think so. I think it has fallen off a bit where it's down here now, but it's still a deck you're going to have to worry about. The only problem with Tier is, you know, The Bestials exist. Shifter exists, you know, so those are cards you do have to worry about when you're playing it with Tier. But when Tier is able to go off, it feels like it's unstoppable, right? But if they have, you know, the Bestials and the Shifter, it gets really rough for Tier Limit. But it's still a very good deck that you're going to have to worry about no matter what, if you're going to a regional or to a YCS. Very, very good. And next thing up here is, not that, where the fuck is Manadium? There it is. I think this deck has gotten a lot better. This is a deck I usually put in something like Tier 2, but the reason why I'm putting it in 1.5 is because people have moved off the Calamities version, which I think is very, very good. They're now just going for, you know, generic extra deck guys making like Baron, Despotter, SP, plus like a counter trap, which in my opinion, I think is better, and them trying just going for a generic board as well makes it where they don't die as hard to Droll. They still die somewhat. Droll is still somewhat of a problem against Manadium, but they have more ways to play through it now that they're not going for the Calamities lock anymore. They're just trying to set up a generic end board now. So I think Manadium is better now than Tier 2. I think it's a 1.5 deck for sure. I think it's like the bottom of 1.5, like creeping to Tier 2, but you know, still a deck that a lot of people have to worry about no matter what. That's why people like are main decking Droll now, just because of decks like Manadium being in the meta. Last thing up I'm going to put in 1.5, which you might find surprising, is Labyrinth. And I think Labyrinth is a little bit better than Manadium as well. Why am I putting Labyrinth this high? This is usually a deck that probably gets in Tier 2 on most people's list, especially something like in my list in the past couple of lists I've made for the meta deck, as I put it in Tier 2. But I'm putting it in 1.5 now, just because, oh my god, when a fucking experienced pilot plays, like a very good pilot plays Labyrinth, holy fuck, Labyrinth looks super, super insane, right? Like, it's actually night and day. Like, if you're talking about an average Labyrinth player, it's probably Tier 2. But if you're talking about a really good Labyrinth player, I think it's a 1.5 deck for sure. Like, RES is so broken for this archetype. Like, holy shit. It's very, very good. It doesn't really rely on something like the Eradicator anymore as well. That's kind of more of a side deck option now for that. So they're playing like Terrors and like Daruma Cannon and Ice Dragon's Prison in those slots instead, just because like something like the D Barrier and Eradicator just doesn't cut it anymore. And it just seems insane. It seems more of a combo deck than it is a trap deck right now, which is very insane, right? So I think this deck is a lot better than people are giving it credit for, so I'm going to put it in 1.5. But that is it for 1.5. Now let's get into Tier 2, shall we? We'll start off with Infernoble Knights. A lot of people might put this in like 1.5. I'm somewhat of a hater. I don't think this deck is as great as people think it is. It does, you know, it's good. I will give it that. It is a super good deck. But, I mean, it feels like if you just hit the Synchro 5, if you, like Ash, or not even that, maybe, maybe it is a 1.5 deck. Maybe I'm giving it, no, I'm a hater. I think it's Tier 2. I don't think it's great. I think it's the top of Tier 2 for sure. I don't think this is as great as people think it is. It does set up on a good end board. I think going second, it's just not great. It's interruptible, like Nib and Droll Droll somewhat hits it. Nib, if they can play around it, it's cool that they can play around it, but Gear Freed is the only thing that plays around Nibiru for them. If they don't get to Gear Freed, the Nib just kills this deck. Is unfortunate. Again, I'm a hater. It probably belongs in 1.5, but I'm a hater. It's going to be in Tier 2. It's going to be top of Tier 2, but it's going to be in Tier 2. Next thing up is Makanko. Yeah. The last time I put this here, I put it in garbage. I thought it was bad. I thought this deck fucking sucks. Then it won a YCS. It immediately won a YCS after I did that, which is fucking dumb. So I have to give credit where credit due. Makanko is good. It's there. It's really, really good. Especially something like the Acid Golem lot works now with like the Ken and Jen, right? So the Acid Golem now works with this, which is very cool. You can even splash like some Infernoble Knights in this as well to make it a very good combo deck going first. So I think that's why I think it was garbage, because I was thinking it as just the going second deck that it is. But now going first, it has plays with Ken and Jen. And if you're playing like some of the Infernoble Knight stuff as well in this, it's pretty cool as well. I don't think it's up here. I think it's in Tier 2. I think it belongs there, but it is a very cool deck that I definitely got wrong on my last list. Next thing up here, let's start off with, you know, the one guy, the Centurions, the new guys from Valiant Smashers. So, I think as a pure deck, I don't think this deck is that great. If it's a pure deck, I think it's in Rogue. But, I think as a splash into something like a Horus engine, or like into like Bestial Synchro kind of shenanigans, I think that's where this thing could shine, because you can kind of go off your Bestial Synchros, and then kind of have your Centurions as your normal summon for the deck, which I think is pretty cool. You know, and also VFD lock, the Calamities lock is always going to be good no matter what. Just being able to one card Calamity locks is always going to be good. But I think this deck shines because it can be splashed into other decks, and that's why I'm putting it in tier 2. Next thing up in tier 2, let's see, Sprite. Sprite's always that weird choice. Like, it's good, but like pure, it sucks. So you have to splash it with either like the runic cards, which doesn't feel great because of the battle phase skip and stuff like that, but it's still a very decent deck. You just have to be able to pilot it well. But like Sprite Tri-Brigade has been propping up as well, which I feel like is very good for the deck. But is it able to compete with like the Manadiums and the Pyroles and, you know, the Unchained and stuff like that? I don't think so. I think it's a good way. It's a good deck. I will not give discredit to it. I think it's still a very decent deck, but it's like it's good, but it's also bad at the same time. It just doesn't compete enough with the top these guys up here. But it's still a deck you're always going to have to worry about as well, just because of how long it's been in the metagame for sure. Anything else I want to put in tier 2? Flunder. Flunder is just always one of those decks that pops up out of nowhere. It's always a deck you're going to have to worry about at like a regional or a YCS, just because it's Flunder. For some reason, people just never give up on this deck. You know, Floodgates exist. The Shifter is Shifter. You know, being able to play Featherstorm is fucking dumb and ridiculous. So yeah, it's always a deck you're going to have to worry about. It's a good deck as well. I think the top decks are better than it, like the tier 1s and tier 1.5 and tier 1s are better than it. But, you know, it's still a very, very decent deck that can compete with the top dogs right now as well. Anything else I want to put in tier 2? I don't know. I want to put this in Rogue. I really do, but it's probably like a bottom tier 2. It probably is like the bottom of tier 2. A lot of people are on this. I don't think the deck is as good as people think it is. It really is not that good. It really isn't. I don't know what people see in this deck. I just don't see it. I just don't see how people think this deck is really that good. I have tested with it and it just seems bad. Maybe I'm testing it with it wrong. Maybe I just don't know how to play it. I just think it's a bad deck. I really do. So I really want to put it in Rogue, but people have been playing it. It's been getting tops as well. So I probably have to put it in tier 2 for that reason. But I'm putting it at the bottom of tier 2 for sure. All right, now on to Rogue. We'll start off with Exosister. I mean, this is a cool deck. I don't think it's the greatest deck in the world, but it's a cool deck when it's able to combo off and stuff like that. But again, I don't think it's really that great. Let's see. Dark World is pretty cool just because it can, you know, hand loop and stuff like that. So it's always something you have to worry about, but it does die to something like Droll and Lockbird. So it's always something you have to worry about for this deck. Rika Sun Avalon is fallen off immensely. I think the deck is cool when it's able to combo off. I think the problem with the deck is going second. It fucking sucks. And I don't know. I just don't think this deck is really that good. It's not been getting tops or whatever. If it has been getting a top, it's like one top in like a top 64 or something like that. Again, I don't think it's that great. Again, if you do play Rika, don't. I'm not shitting on your deck. Like, I'm saying it's bad, sure, but in this meta, any of this Rogue or above will compete in this meta. So that is something you always have to worry about with that. But I just don't think it is as great. I just don't really think it's that great. Branded Chimera has kind of fallen off. I'll put this at the top of Rogue, but man, this has really fallen off, hasn't it? I don't really think it's that great. Yeah, I think that's a controversial take for sure, but I don't think it's really that good anymore. I really don't think Chimera Branded is that good anymore. I don't know why. I really, truly don't know why. It feels like it has everything there, but it just doesn't do anything. Like, it really is surprising that this deck can do a lot, but it just isn't that great. It's really that surprising. It hasn't really have any tops as well in this format as well, so that's kind of surprising. I still think the deck is good, but man, it's just not been doing anything. And then we'll put Morensis in here as well. It's a cool 1-card combo. I still don't think it's really that great. I've always put Morensis in Rogue just because I really don't think it's really that good of a deck, being able just to end on a spell trap negate that's unaffected and like maybe some hand traps to back it up and stuff like that. Really don't think it's really that great compared to what other decks are doing right now. Ooh, this... Okay, so they didn't include Dragon Link in here, so we're going to count this as Dragon Link, and that's the reason why I kind of forgot about this, because if this is just the red Resonator stuff, I'd put this in, like, probably Rogue, but if this is, like the Bestial Synchro, I'd count that with this here, but since they don't have Dragon Link, I'll count this as Dragon Link. I think Dragon Link is still a cool deck. It's fallen off a lot just because, you know, Magna got hit, Chaos Space is at 1. I still think it's like a tier 2 deck, so we'll put it like here. But it's still a very good deck you do have to worry about. And I think that's really it for garbage. Testina does not do shit. Valmonica does not do anything. I like the idea of Memento, but it's just not going to do anything. Salamangreat is trash. Castria is fucking garbage. Do not play this deck. Just play a Fenrir in a deck if you want to do that. Trap Trick, it's cool, but it's a structure deck. We'll put it, okay, we'll give Trap Trick its fair due. We'll put it at the top or the bottom of Rogue. And if it's a Runic Stun, I'm assuming that's what this is getting counted at because Sprite is here. So we're going to count this as Runic Stun. I don't think Runic Stun is that great either. So yeah, that is my tier list. I hope you guys did enjoy. I kind of went on a little bit, I went a little longer than I was expecting to, but I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like and subscribe for more content on the channel. And I hope to see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.